We'll see what comes in. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to CoachX Live with the Institute of Coaching. My name is Jeffrey Hull. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute of Coaching, and I am super excited to have two colleagues, thought leaders, friends of the Institute of Coaching with me here today, Professor Jonathan Passmore and Badri Bajaj, who have recently put out a wonderful new book called the Health Wellbeing Coaches Handbook. It is an unbelievable book for those of us that do coaching in every aspect of health and well-being. You're going to find something to love in this book. I have to be honest, it just came out. I haven't had a chance to read the entire thing. But it's a compendium from thought leaders, researchers, scientists, clinicians, really an incredible spectrum of folks that are in the coaching science space around health and well-being. And, needless to say, the timing is incredibly impeccable because this is something that I think all of us as coaches are finding is absolutely needed in today's world, both for ourselves and for our clients. So I'm super excited to have two of the editors with me here today. And I want to welcome everyone. I'm going to start to hopefully see comments coming in. So please say hello from wherever you are. Sometimes it takes a minute for the comments to come in. And while we're doing that, let me introduce you. If you're not familiar with John Passmore and Badri, let me introduce you to my guests. So Jonathan probably doesn't need an introduction. He's well known in our coaching world as one of the most award-winning and internationally respected chartered psychologists from the UK, but globally well known because he has written or edited over 40 books, including the Coach's Handbook, Becoming a Coach, The Essential ICF Guide, and Coaching Tools, Volumes 1, Volumes 2, Volumes 3, over 250 book chapters and scientific articles. He holds multiple degrees. He's the professor of coaching and behavioral change at Henley Business School and a senior vice president at Ezra. I always joke that maybe he's not really real. He's like artificial intelligence, the way he incredible plethora of abundant science-based materials for us coaches, which is incredibly helpful. We also have a co-editor with me. Badri Bajaj is a coaching and well-being thought leader in India who's an award-winning coach and associate professor at JP Institute of Information Technology. He's the former president of ICF Delhi chapter and has been responsible for impactful initiatives, and ICF India has won prestigious awards thanks to Badri's leadership. And also, we have a third author or editor of this book who's not with us tonight, Lindsay Odes, because he is sleeping, hopefully. Lindsay is in Australia, but I just want to give a shout out to him to thank him for also being part of putting together this amazing book. Jonathan, you want to hold it up because I can't do it with my background screen.
Here we go.
Book. So we're going to talk a little bit today, or a lot today in the time we have, about this amazing book. And I'm seeing folks coming in from all over. So hello. I love seeing, we always get an amazing audience. Santa Fe, New Mexico, Boston, Colorado, Massachusetts. Welcome, Argentina. I love it. So welcome, everyone. And let me just first start with you guys to give us a little background. How did this book come about? Why do you think this topic was so top of mind for you to collect these incredible authors?
This book is part of a series that I'm doing on bringing together the evidence and science with the practice. So we started that series off with a Coach's Handbook, and we've carried on with a number of other publications focusing on specific areas. And what particularly drew me to the aspect about health and well-being was how coaching has extended its areas of practice into considering well-being and health. Health in the sense of working with patients, working in clinical environments, but also for those who are not medically trained, who are not allied health professionals, nurses, clinicians, medics. For those who are working in the well-being space, it's critical for us to consider these aspects of well-being for workers, for people who are doing their daily jobs, and performance is dependent, is related to our well-being. Aspects about resilience and stress, about managing the menopause, about managing all of those mental health challenges that all of us as humans experience. So coaching is stepping into both of those spaces, into the clinical health space and stepping into the well-being space. So we wanted to bring that together. And one of the things that probably colleagues who are on the call will know of much of my work, not universally, that I love to collaborate with colleagues and not just think this is my perspective on this. Here's one person's view of health or well-being, to really try and draw together a team of people who have got expertise and research in different areas. And working with Lindsay, working with Badgery, we really think we have drawn together in this particular book probably the finest group of academics and practitioners to share their insights and expertise, and hopefully enhance the quality and capability of well-being and health coaches, whether they're working in clinical or whether they're working in organizations, to improve their work with clients. So I think that, for me, what was driving me.
That's great. I mean, I personally believe that to a certain extent, all of us as coaches, whether we're in the leadership space or directly in the wellness space or in the career transition space or positive psychology, I mean, we're all coming out of the pandemic, dealing with a very highly disruptive world that we're dealing on all levels. And so health and wellness is part of coaching no matter what domain you're in these days. And I'm particularly impressed that this is such a global enterprise that the three of you undertook. And maybe, Badri, you could speak to this because you're based in India, and I've traveled there and been with ICF, a conference there, and Jonathan's been with me there. Coaching is huge in India. And I'm curious, how do you define health and well-being? Do you think it's the same worldwide, or are there distinctions that you make depending upon where you are in the world?
No, I think it is same worldwide, because here also I have noticed that not only in research and studies, but in a common sense in interaction with people also. So health and well-being are quite interrelated.
Right.
So well-being is affected, it affects health, and it or when people are under stress, they are having there is enough finding that their respiratory problems are there and many other things. So in India also, I have noticed that people under stress or when their well-being is at stake or affected, their health is also affected, and it is vice versa also. So both affect each other. So it was in my mind, actually, we earlier, the first thing was that I was thinking about well-being when I reached out to Jonathan. Then we thought that it is a kind of combination which is affecting, and then we started working and we invited some amazing authors, both academician and practitioners, and this is how we see it, that both are highly related everywhere in the world.
Yeah, and I have to say, the range of topics in this compendium is really quite extraordinary. I have to give a shout out to my colleague, Margaret Moore at the Institute of Coaching, because she has a chapter in this book. But a lot of other very impressive thought leaders that we've had with the Institute of Coaching. A number of them that I've met have done research in the clinical space, in the leadership space, in the AI space. So I'm curious, how did you decide what topics and what surprises came up as you were putting together the list of themes for the book?
I mean, always with a book like this, it's trying to say, what are the key topics, but also who is doing really fascinating and engaging work. So I tend to start from both of those questions, come at it from a topic. These are key topics that we needed to explore and to cover. Mental health, menopause, were half a dozen of those things straight on the list. And then there were people who we thought, do you want to reach out to them because they're doing really interesting work? And Margaret is one of those, really doing pioneering work. And so we wanted to make sure that we brought those voices in. And I think a third thing that was important to us and the team is that we didn't make this a US or a UK or a European-centric perspective, and to try and have a global view. So we're drawing in voices from across the world. Of course, the United States, of course, the European Union, of course, the UK. But we also wanted to reach out to other groups, other writers, to ensure that we had diverse perspective, diverse voices, and diverse topics being included, which stretched our readers' thinking and recognized that other parts of the world, apart from the UK, apart from the US, have really interesting research and really interesting contributions that enables us to improve the work that we do, particularly as coaches working in a digital connected age. So we have coaches at Ezra who might be based in India, but they're coaching in Germany. We have coaches in Germany who might be coaching in Saudi Arabia, and we've got people in Saudi Arabia who might be coaching into the US. So we're a connected world, and enabling that sharing of ideas through a compendium, as you described, was part of our objective.
I'd love for you to share maybe some of the core principles. I know you do in the opening chapter of the book. And because it's good for us to ground ourselves in what we mean by health and well-being coaching. And so you mentioned in your opening a few principles that are core. Do you want to share some of that?
Do you want me to do that, Jeff, or Badri? Do you want to?
Either one. Badri, do you want to give us a sense of what you consider to be the core principles of health and well-being coaching?
Yeah, basically, actually, for health, I think Jonathan will speak more, but the common principles are, as I mentioned, that both are highly related, and we wanted to focus on that how coaching can be used in health and well-being both. And then we thought of sharing some well-being models so that people have hands-on kind of awareness, and at the same time, how health is affecting. And this is a global phenomenon. So our idea behind this was that because this has become a global phenomenon, that health and well-being are highly affected post-COVID also. So then we thought that it might be the useful thing to do it in totality. And so the common principle was that both are related and it should be studied together. That was my initial take on this. Yeah, Jonathan.
I'm just adding to that. I think my own thinking was that as we try to define or clarify what we mean by these things, for myself, health coaching is often around helping people on their journey back to wellness. So it might be that a nursing staff or a physiotherapist might be using a coaching technique or coaching conversations to help people in their recovery journey. When we think about, or when I'm thinking about well-being, this is more in the preventative space. So how do we help individuals to develop well-being strategies that sustain their physical and their mental well-being, and thus reduce the demands on health services, whether that's their private insurance or whether that's, if we're talking in the UK or in the European public health services. And there has been a shift, I would say, over the last decade, maybe even over the last 2 decades, as health providers have recognized the importance of these well-being based approaches. And if we can help individuals to think about, what do I need to do to protect my well-being? What do I need to do in terms of exercise? What do I need to do in terms of diet? What do I need to do in terms of maybe supplements that I might need to take? So that might be managing the menopause. It might be, for older men like me, making sure that I carry on an exercise routine to protect not only my heart, but also continue to manage, as we get older, the muscle fatigue that all of us as an aging body suffer with. And it's very easy to think, got to the end of a day, oh, that was a busy day. I've just written another article. I've just had five meetings. I want to sit down and watch the soccer on the television. I'm going to just switch it on and not do that. Whereas I know for my well-being, I should be engaging in some exercises, and I need to be going swimming. It's great if I go running, and I continue to look after my well-being. And instead of sitting down with maybe a high-fat pizza, well, let me think about my diet and think about how I'm adding to that diet through having enough fruit and vegetables, for example. So coaching can play an active part in these well-being strategies, helping people to identify and then sustain appropriate behaviors that protect their well-being and prevent them calling on health services when they then might move into a period of, for example, maybe not me, but another 10 years, another 20 years, we talk about older people having a fall. And that often then leads to a break, then they have to go into hospital. Well, if we have maintained our muscles and we have maintained the overall skeletal condition through exercising, through a healthy diet, through the appropriate vitamins, then if we do stumble, either we'll catch ourselves before we fall or we're less likely to have that break. And these are the strategies that I think the health organizations are recognizing, and the role that coaching can play in protecting individuals through well-being. And when those incidents do happen, supporting people in their transition back to well-being as a result of a treatment in a clinical setting. And for me, that difference, but they're coming at the problem from two different perspectives, but it's the same issue. It's about how we maintain our health physically and mentally for as long as possible during our lives.
Do you think this is something new though for most coaches, or is it just all of a sudden become more primary? I mean, I think a lot of historically, at least in the leadership space, which is where I tend to focus my coaching practice, there was a tendency to think that the health and well-being focus should be therapy or a nutritionist or some other specialist. And I wonder what you're seeing in the evolution of the coaching profession that raises the stakes for coaches like us to really pay more attention to that component, to that domain of coaching. Because I mean, in your book, you really go through a lot of very specific areas of health and well-being. And do you think it's relatively new for coaches?
I think that's a great spot, Jeff. And I sort of want to say no, but I think the reality is that COVID was a significant moment in many people waking up to the importance of these aspects. And alongside of that has been a wider societal change. And I can only talk about my own experience here in the UK and colleagues that I speak to across the world, but a willingness to now have conversations about topics that men and women didn't speak about. So menopause being an example, erectile dysfunction being an example, the challenges that we have with our prostates as men, and all of these other health issues that are just ignored. We like, well, for our fathers, was too embarrassing to talk about.
Right.
But bringing these out into the open, being honest about how our bodies decline and the impact that has on men and the impact that has on women and the strategies that we can adopt. And a coach may not be the expert on these areas. We're not suggesting coaches need to step in and say, yes, you're suffering with it, and diagnosing individuals with a particular condition. I think that would be inappropriate. But instead, they're helping individuals to explore, understand through their own actions, and then helping them through developing plans alongside that insight to then supporting them to take action. And it's the action, it's getting off of the sofa and going to the gym or going to the pool. It's about the actions that we take. And coaching is a great intervention to support that behavioral change. Developing insight, yes. Not providing the knowledge, not providing the diagnosis unless the coach is qualified to do. And they might be a nurse, they might be a clinician. But for those of us who might be traditional coaches, have just had coach training, then it's all about the insight and the behavioral change, supporting the individuals to make the change for themselves and owning the actions that they take. Coaching is super powerful at doing that.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about being able to, in a safe space, actually raise issues that have historically either been a taboo or been ignored, or in some ways living in denial. For example, the aging is something that it impacts all of us, right? And so to have an understanding that it's safe to speak about some of these issues and how you're feeling and how that may impact your performance as a leader or in an organizational team. And I think what you're really putting forth in this book is how to have these kinds of conversations, and then where to refer people if there's a particularly serious. Right?
Absolutely. And coaches, we're really good. We understand that we are not the experts of everything. We understand where the boundary is, and to then appropriately refer to another expert when that's required. And I think one of the skills of the masterful coach, and I'm careful to use not the master coach, but a masterful coach, is knowing where their boundaries are. To be able to say, in this area, I have some expertise and some knowledge, but there is my boundary. And when the client steps beyond that, I'm confident and comfortable to then say, actually, you might be useful to go and talk to your doctor to get some advice. It might be helpful to go and speak to a nutritionist around this. But we don't have to be the experts in everything. We're an expert in a particular field and have the confidence and capability and the network to refer.
Yeah, and what I love about this is that you're talking about a way of being that's proactive. And I think to your point about the pandemic, we came out of that experience, which was devastating globally, recognizing that no matter how good a leader you are or how high functioning your team is, that the health and well-being of your people is core to them being able to be creative, to being able to even do the work that they do. So to actually raise the visibility of these issues, it seems like a no-brainer, but there was a time, I think, when there was these boundaries that a leader would not cross in terms of discussing the personal dynamic of their people. And I think those boundaries are still there. I mean, we try to hold things confidential. We try to not be overly personal. But a coach is really well suited, especially with the knowledge that you're sharing in this book, to actually be able to raise the visibility of some of these issues. I'm curious, Badri, to hear a little bit about what you're experiencing in India, especially in other parts of the world in the coaching space around this.
Yeah, basically, what I found that maybe in Europe and UK and other parts of the world, like the use of coaching in health was started long back. But in India, it is picking up, and it may take some more time, because when in health related issues, if we have coaches, so the recovery may be faster, and there will be better awareness around what to do and what not to do. So I think this awareness is very much required in the Asian part, or particularly India. India is a very big nation, a kind of continent. So yeah, so in health, basically a lot of emphasis is required that more coaching practices or more coaching principles or more coaching approaches are used in health in Indian context. I think then because we will be also happy that having this combination of health and well-being and using more coaching principles in health and well-being. So I think in India also there will be better outcomes for the patients and other and for well-being there will be leaders. As you rightly mentioned that earlier there was a kind of a gap between the leaders who are not talking what's going on in the personal life of the person, but now I think it is required, and it is required. So the coaching principles, like sensing what people are feeling, or maybe asking them that is there something which can help them. So basically coaching principles for this health and well-being and leadership also. So use of these approaches will really enhance people interaction in India also, this part of the world, and I think there will be better outcomes for people.
I agree. I think it's great. I think, in fact, there are definitely cultures where these things are even more taboo, and the coaching profession has a greater opportunity to maybe make it okay, for people to feel safe, that taking care of some of their own personal issues, but also being able to bring them up, and then having that education from the coach in some ways around what is the right way to bring these topics into the workplace or into the environment where you are to deal with it personally, but also to be able to make others feel safe to bring some of these topics up. We did get a question, and I know we're going to run out of time, which always happens, but Vanina has asked a question about the book, including topics around grief or palliative care. Interesting.
So that's a great question, and absolutely. So we cover that in one of the chapters. Managing bereavement is
Yeah,
a topic that I guess all of us have to experience, because all of us experience that loss at one stage or other in our lives. It might be a partner, it might be a brother or a sister, it might be a partner, and in some instances, coaching can be a really effective strategy to provide a space to explore that grief, to enable the person to reconfigure and think deeply about what's next for them, what's next for their relationships, what's next for them in terms of their identity. When you lose a partner, even when you lose a parent, you're changed by that, not just in sense of your grief, but in terms of your identity. And so coaching can play a really useful role in that, and we explore that in one of the chapters.
Yeah, I love that came up, because I think the one thing that we don't want to leave listeners or your readers thinking is that this is sort of a rose-colored glasses. There is a positive psychology orientation toward building resilience, toward focusing on looking for what works, appreciative inquiry and bringing joy into life. But on the other hand, what I found in many of the topics in the book that I look forward to reading more is it's based on reality, right? And, building resilience is something you do because you're responding to some pain or some trauma or some loss. So these are also not ignored in the book at all. They are part and parcel of what coaches need to be thinking about to bring well-being into their capacities. So love to have you share, before we end, your vision for the book, what you'd like it to accomplish. What are your dreams for this? I know when you put a lot of time and energy and sweat into bringing together all of these people, and that you have a vision for what you'd love it to accomplish.
Badri, do you want to kick off first?
Yeah, I think, Jeff, the dream is that because there was a missing gap between coaching for health and well-being, though there were some parts, some sort of things were there. So we are happy with filling that gap to some extent. And the dream is that more and more people should read, and more people should apply the coaching principles in the health and well-being both, because this is the need of the hour. And like, as I keep interacting with many colleagues throughout the world, and many ICF colleagues also, so well-being is there. Like they kept saying in the last year that well-being is number one priority for ICF and for coaches in the world. And post-pandemic, it has happened. So our dream is that it should be used more by the coaches throughout the world, and there should be better outcome for the clients in terms of both health and well-being, because these are the prime topic post pandemic, and these will be there for next, I think, a decade or so. These are not going anywhere. And like what I think earlier, the researchers used to say that the leadership means performance and satisfaction. Now I think leadership means performance and well-being of the people. So this is going to stay. So the dream is that more and more people use it, find it interesting, apply what is there. And but I think, as there are certain things I feel, and I discussed with Jonathan earlier, that something is missing also, which we plan to do later, like something on sleep, something more on grief, and many other things, which is we plan for future. But the agenda is that it should be used heavily, and people should get benefit out of it. Yeah,
Thank you.
Jonathan.
Well said. Well said. Jonathan, you get the last word, 30 seconds.
Jeff, so I'm a man with a mission, and my mission is to support the wider coaching industry and professional coaches by bringing in an evidence-based perspective. And so that this book is another piece in the jigsaw to bring knowledge, to bring evidence and inform practice. So I don't want to do theory over here, nonsense ideas that no one ever reads. I want to take evidence and help coaches to apply that evidence to get better at what they're doing. And the second thing, but don't tell anyone, is really when I do these books, I learn as much as anybody in doing them. So in a way, I have it like, oh, I don't know enough about this topic. Maybe I should edit a book on it and get all the great people in the world to educate me. Some topics I know a little bit about, but by the end, I'm educated, I'm informed. I myself develop as a coach, and I'm blessed by having colleagues contributing, sharing their knowledge that we can then share with the world. But don't tell anyone that, Jeff.
No, we'll keep that to ourselves.
Yeah, one last thing, Jeff, let me add. Actually, Jonathan is right. So when I'm writing this stuff for the other book, actually there are more ideas that what is missing and what I am learning. So we, while writing, it is learning for self, and some future agenda is also generated in the writing. So I think this is quite exciting.
I totally agree. I mean, what I would say at the end is I think about the role of the Institute of Coaching and the role of thought leaders like yourselves. At the end of the day, I think we all need to be health and wellness coaches.
Yeah.
All of us, no matter what our coaching specialty is. And with that, I want to thank you both for putting the time and energy into creating such an amazing resource for us as coaches. And thank you all for joining us today. And we will definitely look forward to digging deep into this book and having you back to do deeper dive, webinars, seminars, and all of the above. So best of luck with it, both of you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.